Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody who's joining us. I see some people that already was here in first Q&A. That's amazing. I want to welcome Maria Antonia. She's here with us. Last time Ivan was joining us from the Giga team. Today Maria will be helping out, answering some questions. So Maria, I don't know if you would like to introduce yourself real quick in a couple sentences so everybody knows you.
Hi everybody, my name is Maria Antonia. I am the Technology Program Manager for the Giga. Giga is a joint initiative between the International Telecommunications Union and UNICEF. And what we try to do is to try to accelerate universal school connectivity so that every kid and youth has access to information and opportunity choice and can enjoy the beauty of the internet safely, like you and I are doing right now.
Thank you very much. Also, we already started, and Maria Antonia has given us a quick intro to Giga for those who are still not familiar with it, but I'm pretty sure most of you already are a bit aware of what the initiative is. Like I said, I can recognize a few familiar faces from last time. So thank you for that intro. Thank you for explaining to those who may not be familiar what Giga is. This is the series of AI for Connectivity hackathons. So our whole goal is to leverage our AI. That could be many things to help bridge this gap in connectivity in many places. So hopefully that is what we see after all these events. We have already seen very cool projects, so that is what AI for connectivity means for us. Now, let's talk a little bit about the hackathon, or the upcoming hackathon, which will be the second hackathon of the series. Before we go into the Q&A, I believe you cannot see the screen anymore, so let me share that again. And there you have it. So, event timeline. This is for the event this week. It starts on Friday 28th at 4 p.m. CET. We will have the hackathon kickoff online, like usual. We'll stream it in our regular channels and on site in Barcelona for those that will be joining us, which hopefully is many of you. Then on Saturday, which March 1st, we open doors 10:30 a.m. We will have a couple workshops to help you get through the hackathon, to help you build your ideas. And of course, Sunday submission day, where you'll have until 4 p.m. to submit your projects. We'll be there both online and on site helping out to make sure you are able to finish your project. On Monday, we will announce the winners at the Mobile World Congress 2025 in Barcelona. And later on, we will do a stream as well announcing the winners and hopefully sharing a couple questions with those that made it to the finals. The on-site event, as I mentioned, will be in Barcelona. You are more than welcome to join us. It will be in Entity Data Living Labs. You can see it's a very nice space. So hopefully it's a great place for you to get creative and build very innovative solutions, which we are hoping to see. Here is QR for where the stream will happen for the kickoff. It's also the same link where the stream is happening right now. I'll leave it there for a second so you can scan it. You can find it in LabLab AI in Twitch. Now, what are we looking for? And we'll circle back to this in a bit. For these projects, well, the judging criteria mainly is based on 4 areas, which is application of technology, how effectively you use the technology that you chose into the solution that you're presenting, the business value, I always say this is the business value or the impact that this solution can have. Originality, of course, how unique and creative is your method of addressing the challenge. And the presentation, which is super important. How clear and effective are you able to communicate your ideas so that the people that are judging can really understand what your goals are and how are you approaching these problems. Very important to keep in mind, of course, is that the solutions must be relevant to Giga's problem statement. Again, we'll circle back to this in a second, but everything is in the Hackathon page. For those that have not checked it out, please go check out Hackathon AI for Connectivity number 2, Building Resilient Networks. And of course, very, very important to implement open source technologies. What are open source technologies? Well, open source means that the code is publicly available. Everyone can use it, modify it, and share it. There's different types of open source. There's open software, open data, open AI, open content. But the most important things to keep in mind when you're building open source projects and working with open source projects are things like the licensing, that you need to make sure that both your projects and anything else you're building on top of has to have an open source license. There's many different licenses that fall under this category of open source. For your project, preferably the AGPL version 3 would be ideal. Of course, if we're talking about code, it needs to be a public repository. Everything, both backend and frontend, must be in an open public repository, preferably in GitHub. The dependencies that you use in your project should also be open source. We will help you providing you a list of open source dependencies, and I'll mention more about that in a second. And of course, best practices is create a README that has all this information about your project. What is it about? What are your development requirements? How do you install it? Contribution guidelines, the license of your project itself, and contact information. So that's what open source is. Just remember, it's very, very important that the solutions that you submit are open source. Now, what are the hackathon prizes? So for this second edition of AI for Connectivity, there will be, alongside with the acceleration opportunity, so top teams will secure a spot in a 6-week exclusive Giga and LabLab Next incubation program. Alongside this, there will be cash prizes for first, second, and third place, which will go from $3,000 to $1,500 to $500 respectively. And of course, as I mentioned before, the winners will be announced at MWC 2025 on Monday. Now, before we go into the Q&A, because I'm sure lots of you have questions, first of all, please feel free to start asking questions on the chat. We'll get through everything. Also, if you're watching on Twitch, drop the questions in the chat. We're keeping an eye on that as well. But let's do, for those who were here last time, we had a nice dynamic where we had a small icebreaker. So let's give this icebreaker a go. Justina will be helping us sharing the poll in the chat in a second. Justina, this is the same as the first Q&A, just so you keep that in mind. And I'll give everybody a second to both think your questions and give it a try. So whenever you're ready, you can drop your questions. Justina will drop the polls in a second, and also Human is going to be helping us keep an eye on the questions that we might have on Twitch or other channels. I see there's some people typing, so let's give them a second. Well, in the meantime, thank you, Justina. In the meantime, while people think about the answer and what type of questions they would like to answer. So ask. I have a question for you, Maria Antonia, which is actually a question we had last time here, and Ivan helped us answer. I would love to hear your point of view as well, because this helps inspire people to build with AI. And the question is, how does Giga uses AI in its work, and how can participants contribute to this through their projects? So, would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Fantastic. So let me start by explaining a little bit that one of the core areas of work that Giga does is to try and establish a source of truth of school locations. That means that there is an accurate and complete data set of school locations that can be used for connectivity planning. Now, connectivity planning is a topic that is extremely sensitive to location. It's not the same extending fiber from one node to the other one over a mountain or over a river, or if it's 1 kilometer versus 500 meters. So knowing with precision where school is located is an essential input for connectivity planning. Now, one of the ways in which we use AI at Giga is by leveraging different computer vision algorithms on top of satellite imagery and remote sensing imagery in order to detect potential candidates for school locations. This means that we have a probability that a specific location is a school or not, and we train these on the basis of the data that we receive from governments or from open data. In this way, with this implementation of machine learning, what we can do is try and create candidate schools that are better location markers for a school than the one provided by a government. These may be for different reasons. For example, information normally doesn't travel upstream from different administrative areas from local government to national government very well. There's usually information loss, but there also may be not enough precision, for example, in decimal points when you receive a location. So what we try to do is leverage these algorithms to get candidate possibilities of better school locations that are more precise. This is one of the ways. There's a couple of others, but it's one of the, I would say, most promising applications of how we use AI in our work. The other one is AI for modeling optimal layout of infrastructure. And I could go more in depth in that one if interesting to the crowd.
Thank you. I think it would be definitely interesting. So if you want to add maybe a couple more details. I see we don't have questions yet in the chat, so I don't see why not. I have a couple of questions prepared that I'm pretty sure they will be helpful for people. And also, Human, if there's anything in our other channels, please let me know. But while they finish answering the polls, Maria Antonia, if you would like to expand on that, I think it would be great.
Wonderful. So the other way that we use AI is that we use combinatorial optimization algorithms to try and model the best way in which infrastructure should be laid for connectivity projects. So I, for example, already spoke about fiber and fiber being quite costly, and it's very different to lay fiber via a road than via a river than overhead. What we're trying to do is, given different constraints, so for example, a budget constraint or a type of technology that a government would like to use as their connectivity medium, we're trying to leverage AI to optimize what that infrastructure plan would be like and to meet those different constraints, be that budget, be that technology, be that a combination of scale or others.
Great. I see some people writing, so let's see if there's any follow-ups on that.
I have a question for myself, maybe that I would like to share the answer to.
Definitely.
Fantastic. So some of you may be asking yourselves of why are we thinking about public sector networks? What's so different about them? What's so important about them that it merits putting together a whole hackathon series on them? The answer, I think, is that the telecommunications landscape is evolving quite rapidly. We see virtualization, we see a push towards decentralization. And if you're familiar to the general network ecosystem, you know that increasingly connectivity is becoming more software defined. Now, what do I mean with that? Is that before the paradigm of connectivity, maybe the one in your home, is that there's a hardware device, and basically the hardware device limits all of the functionalities of the network. Now, nowadays, connectivity is becoming more software defined, which means that these hardware are becoming programmable. That means that you can configure routers remotely, you can change different parameters of networks, and you can basically have an into how a network operates, and you can optimize it with data and via software. Increasingly, open source technologies too are playing a crucial role in shaping what resilient, scalable, and equitable networks are. So we see a shift in this programmability of networks, and at the same time, we're seeing the AI boom, right? Now, everyone is doing AI. I'm sure we all do LLMs. We all love using ChatGPT or Llama or different ones. Now, AI is inherently a network function, right? Because you need to you need to train data, and then you need to do an inference on the data, and most of the time you're using cloud computing, and this means that data is moving back and forth, and AI just places a huge burden, for example, on demand for data centers, but also in bandwidth usage, right? So, and we're seeing actually like a couple of data centers emerge here and there, and increasingly there's a lot of demand for that. But our networks must also evolve to handle these new demands. And it's not easy to do, because on top of building a network, then you need to build sort of all the data centers as well. So AI is putting a burden on networks. Networks themselves are changing, but AI also presents an opportunity to optimize network performance. So it's like that double-edged sword, which can be really, really positive in this new sort of network paradigm. What we're trying to do here is bring a spotlight into networks that are likely to be in underserved regions, that are particularly slow, that maybe don't have the latest hardware, where service quality is perhaps very low. For example, you have a router that is 15 years old. It's not up to the standards, which are constantly changing. So it limits the access that perhaps students or people may have in different regions. Now, why we're putting together this hackathon is to bring bright minds like yours. Hopefully, amongst you, there's a couple of connectivity specialists or network engineers. If not, that's completely all right. But to think about how these aging hardware-defined networks that struggle to keep up with evolving digital needs can be brought up to date, and how we can maybe extend some of the benefits that these really modern networks are seeing by dedicating a little bit of time to think about these other types of networks, which are common in countries, for example, like Colombia, which is where I'm from, and a lot of the countries that Giga works in.
Yeah, thank you. That's super interesting. I think you make many very good points, especially like we often think like, sure, this is about networks. How can I build more networks in places where there's currently not infrastructure, but a lot of the time, like you mentioned, the infrastructure is already there. There's just not maybe that like service availability for everybody, or they're just underused, right? So hopefully, I see a couple of questions. I'm gonna go back to the timeline of the event because somebody requested that. So while we talk a little bit, I think this goes to your first before you were answering your question. You mentioned fiber being an option for internet, like network distribution, and they're asking what alternatives are there. I see some people already answered satellite. There's many other ways of distributing internet access. There is digital subscriber lines, for example, which is copper, like telephone lines. There is indeed satellite internet now. It's becoming very popular, I see. Cellular internet, which is the one like phone uses, of course. So there's quite a few alternatives. Yes, Maria, you want to say something?
Yeah, and for schools, most likely we see a combination of fiber, cellular, and some blend of copper DSL, with some governments being willing to try satellite. But most of the time, it's the connectivity medium is a choice that is derived from availability of those technologies in the last mile. So, for example, if you think of different connectivity rings or sectors in highly densely populated urban areas, you can call that ring one. All technologies are available in ring one. As you move further away into more into more rural, less populated, maybe more rough terrain, that number decreases significantly because it takes quite a lot of infrastructure investment and capital expenditure to extend access to connectivity in more remote places. So usually one thinks of fiber as the gold standard, but there are some towns where the fiber node is just not there. There's no fiber point of presence nearby. Or, for example, think about landlocked countries where international connectivity is already perhaps more challenging than in other countries where submarine cables land.
Thank you. Yes, so there you have it. I see another question about the event itself. What if somebody's unable to come to Barcelona? Well, don't worry about it. As we mentioned, it's both online and on site. Of course, we would love to have as many of you on site. But if you can't, you can always participate online. I don't know if you have already participated in an event. If not, you just use the LabLab AI platform. All the information is there. During the kickoff, we walk you through a little bit of the steps. We're happy to answer more questions on this as well, but don't worry about it. You can participate online. Next question: how can we simulate network for project? Like a project is resource allocation using AI. So to simulate the software network, it's time consuming, and in Hackathon we don't have that much time. So I'm gonna answer this, and then I don't know if Maria Antonia wants to add something to it. We collected set of resources for you. I mean, simulating a network, I think it's a very broad statement. It depends what you want to simulate from the network, like what's your goal, what type of information you want to obtain from the simulation. There is some projects out there to help you navigate this. We are trying to collect useful data as well, so you can have this data. Let's say you don't have to simulate it, you have access to the data. Yes, it is time consuming. Yes, we are aware of the time constraints of a hackathon. That's why we are trying to help you as much as possible overcome these difficulties to get you kickstarted as fast as we can. But ultimately, I think it's part of the let's call it hackathon experience, right? It's a challenge, and that's when creativity and resourcefulness comes into place. Anything you want to add to that, Maria Antonia?
Yeah, that's about right. I don't know if it's unfair to say maybe you can start prepping it right now, knowing that maybe that's the data that you'll need. There's nothing bad in getting ahead.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think No, I don't think I'm sure. Actually, if you go to the hackathon page, you'll find there the resource hub. So to everybody, even if you think that you need the data, you know that you need the data, or you're not sure what you want to build, definitely recommend checking that out. It's very helpful if you don't know what you want to build. It's easier to build knowing what you have than to build something and then see if you have what you need, right? So that's number one. And if you already know what you have, you might just find the answer there. If not, definitely I would start searching what can help me get there. And yeah, so you start also not working, but just getting ready to build during the hackathon. I think it's definitely a good idea. I see you answer a question, Maria. Thank you about sustainable development. Somebody's asking about sponsoring trip to Barcelona. Maybe we can. I think all the information is in the hackathon page. I'm not sure if Justina maybe can reach out later if you have further questions.
Everybody that's been chosen to sponsor a trip has been contacted. Is that right?
Justina, can you confirm that, please?
Yes, that's.
Yes, thank you. That's correct. Each team will have how many minimum maximum participants? This is a pretty common question. Minimum one. You're free to join by yourself. We often get asked if you can join solo. Definitely. Maximum 6 people. I have said this like 7 times already this week, but let's say you have a larger team. You're 8 people, right? Unfortunately, the maximum amount of people we support is 6. So what do you do in these cases? You don't want to leave 2 of your friends or people out, right? My suggestion is always split into 2 teams and compete against each other, right? Use that to have a little bit more motivation to build something pretty cool. That's my approach. But yes, quick answer is from 1 to 6 people in participants. Let's say, yes, we already went through the network simulation. Are there possibility for some quiet spaces in order to record presentation? So yes, we have thought about that. I believe we will try to arrange something, especially on Sunday, so people can record their presentations. We are aware of the challenge, but also it's even if you don't have the most quiet environment, I have seen from experience very, very cool and creative recordings of your projects. So yes, we'll do our best to help you there. So yeah, probably the answer is yes. So there's more questions about being sponsored on site. If you have to be from Europe, but for now, I'll go back to the what Maria Antonia told us, which is truth. Everybody who was chosen for the sponsorship has already been contacted. Let's see. How can AI help fix a network issue where the SSID is enabled but Wi-Fi is not visible while LAN is working, and network analyzer tools cannot detect the Wi-Fi or MAC address? I mean, yes, Maria?
Good question. I'd say it's a good one to think and play around with at the hackathon. It's really quite interesting, these network analyzer tools. I think one could couple it with some sort of LLM interface, or just in themselves to try and make sense of the data that's outputted from the network analyzer tools. There's a couple of us also open source network analyzer tools, so definitely it would be a worthy endeavor for the hackathon to try and work on something connected to a network analyzer tool.
Yeah. So what I would say is I would ask you if you can answer that question during this hackathon, right? Hopefully, yes. Let's see. Wait, let me check real quick if we have questions from Twitch. Yes, we do. So from Twitch, we have somebody's asking, what would you expect? Yes. Okay. I'm going to split these into 2 questions. The first one, it's not exactly what they asked. We already asked this to Ivan last time, but I also would love your input, Maria, is what would you like to see out of this hackathon? What type of projects would get you excited to review? What are the expectations?
That's a great question. Talking from experience from the last hackathon, I saw a lot of people invested a lot of time in their interface and their UI to show a graph in real time being updated. Whilst that is really important, I would put a lot more emphasis on the value proposition. For these hackathons specifically, we will be having different tracks to be able to guide you as you look into, for example, procurement and policy or network design and strategic planning. I would put a lot of emphasis into thinking about how is it that what I'm building is contributing to more resilient or better networks. Don't spend that much time on the UI. Of course, it's great for a demo, but if the way in which you implement AI is very clear and compelling, methodologically robust, I think that's the type of projects that we'd like to see. Now, on the specific areas of focus that I would like to see, I'm just going off one of the suggestions here on Discord. I think mixing, for example, observed data, network data, to try and make sense of outages when you have a low or not a super high IT background is extremely relevant, right? So how could a student in a school use network analyzer to make sense of different local area network challenges? Now, I could give a couple more ideas. I think anything focused on local area network optimization and troubleshooting is really valuable. But I would also try to focus more on maybe wide area or provider edge insights and tools for better connectivity for public facilities, including schools.
So I hope everybody's really taking note, because trust me, these are the type of projects that would be very impactful to see. Yes, from last hackathon, we did see a lot of similar projects. There was a lot of monitoring projects. I think it's not that a monitoring project is not good, right? But what I think these projects lacked is it was just monitoring without any actionable thing. It was, this is what's happening, and as Maria mentioned, some pretty nice graphs, but there was no I don't know, conclusion, analysis, anything, or like an interface that would help you understand this, right? It was just the monitoring. And yes, this is true for those who are hackathon enthusiasts. Very often it's easy to get lost or like to lose the point of the hackathon and focus on the UI, because unfortunately that's the first thing you see. And when you're building, let's say, applications, commercial applications, it matters a lot. So that's a great point that Maria Antonia just mentioned, that don't focus that much in that. Yes, because ultimately it's not really going to help to get where your project, where you would like your project to be, and the projects that we would love to see. Now I'm going to go back to the original question. Yes, Maria.
Sorry. Yes, if you for some reason try to do some monitoring, think about what the logic of your algorithm is doing. Is it detecting outages on the basis of what? Do you have enough context of the data and the type of signals that mimic a network outage? Are you actually detecting what you think you're detecting? So don't do monitoring just because it's maybe a straightforward thing to do, because it's actually very complex. Do monitoring because you're excited in thinking about the right algorithm that outputs an insight that someone could use for better network management.
Yeah. Also, now that I remember, we also saw a few of projects that tried to be like an all-in-one shop. This is a good idea sometimes, and sometimes not such a good idea. I think it's always better to focus on one thing and do it the best you can than trying to cover all multiple aspects of such a big process like it's network development. So yeah, also to help on that, as Maria Antonia mentioned, we have tracks for this hackathon. For those who haven't checked it out, I really encourage you to go to the hackathon page. But basically, our tracks are three, which is procurement and policy innovation, network design and strategic planning, and the optimizing resource allocation. So to help you focus a little bit more on specific concrete areas to work on, we created all of those tracks. I welcome you to go give them a read in the hackathon page. Come back if you have any questions. And now I will go back to the original question that I completely deviated from our viewer in Twitch, and it's, what would you expect from someone that doesn't have high programming level in AI? I want to answer that real quick. Maybe Maria Antonia wants to add something after that. I don't think, like, in the world we live today, you don't really need to have, well, not high level, but the opposite in programming, right? Low level. You don't have to be an expert on AI to be able to work with. We live in a world where after this AI boom, it has become very democratized, very accessible. We will give you access to some tools, and there's a lot of things out there that you can like rely on to help you get started. I often, when helping people in hackathons, they ask me, "Hey, I don't know how to do this," and the first question is always, "Did you already looked it up online?" Right? And 90% of the time, the answer is no. So I would always start there. There's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of people building on AI. There's a lot of people that believe in open source. So if you don't have the experience, I would always rely on what's already out there and on the technology itself. Like, I think anybody who builds or like is a software developer and tells you that has never used ChatGPT is probably not telling you the truth. So maybe other than using it inside your solution, you can also use it to build your solution, the LLMs, let's say, right? Yeah. The other question was,
Well,
would Giga schools? Yes, Maria.
Sorry, a team is not only composed of AI specialists. For the success of a hackathon, you need someone to be on time, to start building materials, to work on the value proposition, to work on a little bit of a market assessment, to project manage, just check in with your team. So whilst, of course, it's great to have AI expertise, if you partner with others in a team that may have that expertise and you don't, maybe you can be bring in additional expertise in other areas, which are also very valuable.
You're absolutely right. And also, fun fact and a useful fact for all of those that will be participating in this hackathon, something as trivial as making the presentation is always underestimated. And I have seen countless teams that did not make it just because they didn't think to have somebody help them do all of these things that Maria Antonia just mentioned, or just simply preparing a presentation, right? So point being, many different skills are definitely helpful in competitions like this. I see some questions on the chat, but I still haven't gone through the ones in Twitch, so I'm gonna go through that. Next one is, would Giga schools act as connectivity hubs for surrounding underserved communities? So that's for you, Maria Antonia.
That's exactly right. Why we focus on schools initially is because it gives us a bounded problem. Instead of connecting everybody, we give it a limit and something very tangible that we can work with, which are schools. And of course, UNICEF being the the agency for children and it focusing on education, it's a great fit. But of course, schools are a hub for community. You have teachers coming in, you have parents dropping off children, sometimes you have businesses that also operate within a school, like for example a bakery. So the idea is to connect schools first, or to connect schools and then the rest of the community. When you, for example, work with the government to extend last mile solutions to schools, then the provider has a commercial incentive because they've already extended the infrastructure to that school. So you're exactly right in that the Giga schools are connectivity hubs, and can increasingly act as connectivity hubs, for example, for infrastructure sharing for surrounding communities.
Thank you. I think that's all the questions from Twitch. Quick announcement before we keep going through questions. I see there's a couple other questions. I also see you already answering them on the chat, so thank you for that. But yeah, for those who are looking for teammates, we were just talking about like different skills required in a team. So for those who are still looking for teammates, remember we're running a matchmaking session today. To participate, you just need to fill a form. Where can you find this form? Well, it's right now in the announcements channel. Yes, you will find it at the very, very top of the channels in the server. In there, there's some instructions. You just need to fill the form. It will ask some questions to better matchmake you with some people. And yes, then we'll reach out to you, I believe, helping out on getting you a team so you can build something. Now going back to the questions. I believe the one we haven't answered, let me see. So we should focus on schools only or other related networks. I'm gonna let you answer that, Maria Antonia. I think I have an answer as well, but I would like to hear yours first.
Only schools, I would think of generally the focus is on public sector networks, and by that we mean dedicated network that a government may procure. But that could be for a health center, that could be for a police station, that could be for a school. However, we're also interested in thinking about these outdated legacy networks. So that's also a relevant emphasis. So no, we're not only focused on schools for the purpose of the hackathon, it's broader than that.
Thank you. Yes, I was going to say public sector networks. Also, like while I believe schools are the ultimate goal, I think there's a lot of ways to get there without starting by focusing on the last step of the process, right? There's a question from Twitch. Do you have to bring your own laptops? Yes, you do have to bring your own laptop, or I've seen people code in phones as well, iPads, whatever you manage to secure. But yes, you do have to come with your own hardware. I will, yes, thank you, Justina, for reminding me. I will share the QR for the code matchmaking when we finish the Q&A part of the Q&A. Where will there be different winners for different tracks? No, there's 3 winners overall. The tracks are to help you focus into a more specific part of the problem. Again, this is from experience from first hackathon. But yes, just 3 winners for this event. There will be 2 more to come. Okay. I see people typing. I see a question from... I know, it's the same question from Twitch, yes. So, let's see what other questions do we have. I'm gonna answer a question that we went through last time, so hopefully it's also useful for you. And it's what type of AI or AI models, right, or technologies, tools, etc. are allowed during the hackathon. Well, like starting by stating that AI is a very broad term. It's a very big umbrella term, which we often, or I guess lately, misinterpret as mainly LLMs. Well, LLMs are definitely AI, and they're super useful, and there's a lot of value and a lot of cool things to build with those. There's also a lot of technologies out there that can also do the job sometimes better than an LLM. So I would encourage everybody to really do your research in what type of AI would be useful for you. Right, this can go from classical machine learning to many other types of technologies. And when it comes to what's allowed, anything as long as it's open source, it's okay. We saw in our previous hackathon many projects that could have built something fully on top of open source technologies, but for X or Y reasons, they chose the version of the technology that's not open source. I'm going to give you an example to illustrate, and so it doesn't happen to you as well. Let's say, going back to LLMs, you build something and your solution has an LLM interface which helps you understand better in natural language whatever your functionality or whatever you built is, right? And for sake of simplicity, you use OpenAI GPT to build it. Well, that's not an open source solution, and I believe everybody understands that if I chose ChatGPT, same way I could have chosen an open source LLM that would help me get the job done. And that makes a huge difference because it goes from your project being open source to your project not being open source. Sure, there could be an argument when it comes to performance and other things, but trust me, open source AI overall community is huge. There's a lot out there that you can do with it, and you can always like add your sprinkle to it since it's open source. You have much more flexibility when it comes to working with these technologies. But yeah, anything as long as it's open source, it's allowed, let's say. I see more questions. So I'm gonna read and then I'll answer. As I see, the major focus on this hackathon is on networking. I wouldn't say networking, but okay. So other tracks would have less chances of winning, I guess. No. So all of the tracks are strictly related to network development. Like everything in the tracks falls under the overall topic, which is network development. Mm-hmm. There's many aspects inside the network development lifecycle, many different parts where you can jump and help. I'm gonna go through the tracks so you get a better idea. Let's say you want to build a project to build networks in a country where there's not that much development in infrastructure for this, right? To do this, you have to go through a procurement process. You have to understand the policies of the place, how does it work, and this is all something that you have to go through. It's time consuming, and it's part of the ultimate goal, which would be that you expand the coverage or the availability of this facility, right? It's still part of it. So that's track number one. Anything that helps you understand regulations, policies, vendor contracts, and things along these lines. We have track number two, which is design and strategic planning. This can go from understanding the demographics and the terrain of the place to do a better resource placement of the different infrastructure that you have to build to create more cost-effective architecture that aligns better with the specific needs of the place where you're building, and so on and so forth. And ultimately, we have track number three, which is optimizing resource allocation, which goes both to resource that will be allocated and to resource that already exists and could be better allocated. Of course, still talking about leveraging network assets. So it's all network development. It's just different parts of it. And again, this was with the goal to help you focus on a more specific thing when solving a problem. Maria, I don't know if you would like to add something to that, or we can move to the next question.
to the next question. That was pretty clear.
Okay. By the way, no need to apologize for bombing questions. That's the whole point of this, to ask the questions and understand better everything. Can we use open source LLMs which are hosted by a cloud provider? Yes, for the prototype building, yes. As long as it's in open source technology, it doesn't matter if you're running it on your computer or if you're currently relying on, in this case, AI/ML to access or to tap into the capabilities. Maybe you don't have the compute. Most likely, most of us don't have the compute to run a larger language model or a model in general. So this is okay. Free model versus open source models. I'm gonna go back real quick to the slide that we talked about open source. So open source, it's not really about price. I mean, I guess there's a correlation. But open source is everything that's publicly available. Anybody can use it and modify it and share it. Quick example, very often many technologies, not just LLMs, technologies have licenses which allows you to use it for free. But if you want to turn it to commercial use, then you have to like pay, depends on the licensing, right? There's a licensing process to be done. While open source is entirely open source at any point stage of like trying or developing or distributing the technology built upon this open source technology. So I would say that's the difference. I leave here the slide for a little bit if you want to check it out further. So I don't see more questions and we are running out of time. So I'm gonna give last chance for anybody to ask a question. Maria, also, if you want to add anything else before I move into how to join the hackathon and share some information with them, feel free to take the stage.
All good, just that we're excited to have you hack by the end of the week, and I look forward to looking at your submissions.
Thank you. I see one last question. It says, I'm very curious if I can do something around agriculture with this hackathon like I did in the last one. I'm going to answer something related to the reusing projects, and then I would love to hear your input in this, Maria Antonia. So it's fine. Like, also, this is something we saw. Many people grabbing a project they built and trying to adapt the narrative just to fit the topic. In this case, let's call it networks. But it was really not a solution built for this. We saw this, and just as a reminder that ultimately, I don't think that's the type of project we're looking for. Again, I don't see any problem building upon something you have built. We are actually encouraging people that built something in the first hackathon to come with an work and improving what they built in the first hack during this second hackathon. So not a problem at all. Just make sure it actually aligns with the goals of the event, right? And I don't know your thoughts on how an agricultural project could be relevant. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Maria Antonia.
The only use case I can think, for example, if it's an IoT network to monitor, say, crops, and you want to sync it with something else, but I think it's a little bit of a left field area. Again, the focus is on public sector networks. If there's something around agriculture or an overlap with agriculture rather than a main focus on it, it could be relevant, though again, the emphasis is on resiliency of public sector networks, connectivity networks.
Thank you. I agree. I mean, anything I can think of would be a stretch, but there might be something I'm not thinking about. So yes, as long as it actually is relevant, and I really encourage everybody to question yourself if your solution is relevant to the overall goal. Could be. Okay, I'm gonna move to the final slides. I see there's somebody typing. So I would recommend you hurry up if you're gonna ask something. In the meantime, let me tell you about next steps and how to get involved in this hackathon. So first of all, here's the matchmaking that I was mentioning earlier. It will start today and it will conclude on the 27th. So if you haven't gone or if you haven't seen it in the announcements channel yet, here's the QR for the form. You can scan it, fill it, and we'll help you find the team. I see the question, can we keep repo private? No, that's the whole point of building an open source solution. First, there's two big problems to this. A, if it's private, how are judges going to see what you built? Second, if it's an open source solution, which is what you should be building for this hackathon, it doesn't make sense to have a private repository.
You can own the IP. You can own the IP. That doesn't preclude a solution from being open source, but the code has to be freely distributable, modifiable. But you can retain the IP, the intellectual property of the solution you build.
Thank you. Yes, hopefully that answers your question. How to contact mentors? To ask for help or to ask any questions, first you would need to find the AI for Connectivity channel. You can find it in upcoming hackathons, or if you can't see it, probably you should scroll at the very, very top and browse channels, and then you'll be able to find it. Once in there, you can always use the mentor tag or the Giga mentor tag, who are respectively mentors that we have invited. Mentors from the Lab and Native team will help you, and for Giga mentor, you will be tagging, of course, directly somebody from the Giga team to maybe help you in your question. And yes, there's an invitation for you to join the open source community on Discord for Giga. In there, you can see the QR to join them, their social media, go follow them, and their repositories in case you want to check out what they've been working on. Justina just shared with you the results of the icebreaker, just so you know if you answer correctly. And I think that will be all for this second session for Q&A. Thank you everybody that was here asking questions, watching us on Twitch. Thank you, Maria Antonia. I think it was super informative, super useful, and hopefully they learned something that will help them get where they want to building their project this weekend. So thank you everybody once again. And we'll see you this weekend during the hackathon.
See you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Rage on that beat, going crazy.